Hey guys, Nabil here, and welcome to the first episode of the Samurai Shodown characters tutorials, where we're gonna go through each character of the Samurai Shodown game and talk about their moves, techniques, and basically a tutorial on how to play this character. Now, in this first episode, we're gonna start with Haohmaru, who's the hero and protagonist of the series, and I'm using the demo that was recently released for the Asian market. So let's go ahead and check all of Haohmaru's moves, the damage, how you can use them, and how to play this awesome, well-rounded character. So as you know, in Samurai Shodown we have 3 slash buttons, or 3 weapon based buttons, and 1 kick button. So we're gonna go through all the normal moves before we go into the special, then the supers. So we're gonna start with the light slash, which is a fast slashing movement. It's quite fast, does not have quite a lot of, starting animation. Does about 3% of damage, not much. But again, it's quite fast. If you're close to the opponent, it changes from a slash attack to an elbow attack. Damage is the same, however. You can use it as a jump-in attack, which does a little bit more of damage. It does about 5% instead of the 3%. And again, when I'm talking damage, I'm talking about when my power gauge is depleted. Of course, in Samurai Shodown, the more rage meter you have, the more damage you're going to be doing. So again, these numbers, these percentages really do not mean much. This is only when my rage gauge is completely depleted. A low attack with A. Again, if you're close to the opponent, it's an elbow attack. And if you're a little bit far, it's a slashing attack, and damage is about the same. In Samurai Shodown, you can also use each of these buttons after dash forward. So, and here it completely changes, it becomes a punch attack, as you can see. And does actually more damage. It does the same amount of damage that you will get from a jump-in light slash. And then we have the medium slash, which can work as a poking attack, which is really good at keeping your opponents at bay, as you can see here. If you're close to your opponent, it changes to a downward slash with slightly less damage. Now with my power gauge depleted, I get about 10% from the poking, and if I'm close to my opponent, it gets about 8%. You can use it again as a jump-in attack. It can be used as a combo starter, but with a very limited small window. We'll look at that later on. If you're crouching, it does about 9% of damage. And if you are close to your opponent, it also turns into an elbow attack. Does about 8%, slightly less. You can again use it as a dash attack, which turns into downward slash. Does not have the same, token abilities, and slightly less damage too, as you can see. And then we have the star of the Samurai Shodown series, the hard slash, and it's the star because it does an insane amount of damage. As you can see, it's 30% taken from poor Haohmaru here. If I had a full power gauge, it will do about 36% damage. And something that you guys need to know, especially if you're new to the series, even as appealing as this attack is with the damage that it does, you want to be very, very careful, because if your opponent blocks this attack, look at that, it leaves you quite, completely open to anything from the opponent. Actually, they can get, their super or super special move or weapon flipping technique, so you gotta be very careful. What I see newcomers to the series rely on this attack a lot because of the amount of damage it does, and it's understandable, but you want to be very careful because it will leave you quite open. Now, you can use this attack, as a jump-in attack. It does about 16% damage, however, it's a very good combo starter, and we'll talk about that later on. If you use it while crouching, it actually turns into this really effective anti-air. Definitely slow startup, but it'll work. If you're using it, you can also use it after a dash, which is a little bit faster, as you can see, than just doing a crouch. So almost 50% faster, as you can see. Of course, damage is a little bit less, so you have 15% here, and if you do it with the run-in, it's about 14%. But it's definitely a great anti-air you want to keep in mind, and pretty good damage too. And then we have probably the lowest, the least used button in Samurai Shodown is the kick button. Again, depends on the character, obviously, but as you can see, this is the kick button for Haohmaru. The animation does not change whether you're close or far from the opponent, as well as damage. In this case here, with the power gauge depleted, is about 5%. The kick also becomes some sort of a low kick if you do forward and kick. If you use it as a jump-in attack, it does about 3%, so slightly less. And then if you're crouching, it's about 2%. Notice that you can't combo from it as, you know, some other fighting games, like Street Fighter, for example. You can just go down and keep hitting the low attack for 2 or 3 hit combos. You actually can't. It's actually a slow attack. If you're using diagonal back, down, and forward, and the kick, it actually turns into a sweep. There's about 7% damage. If you use it after a forward dash, then it's actually a sweep and a slide, as you can see. This is pretty good if you want to surprise your character. Quite a fast startup. So those are the normal moves, normal attacks for Haohmaru. There's also the universal overhead, which is done by pressing the medium and hard slash. So this is very good for crunching, you know, opponent that are guarding. These are actually an overhead. Unlike most of the characters, Haohmaru does not use his sword and the overhead, rather than he uses his punch. And then finally we have the grab, combination buttons, which is done by pressing kick and hard slash. So we have the forward grab if you hit back, and those same 2 buttons, you get a backward grab, and it leaves your opponent quite open. So actually, it's actually good to use it if you want to hit your opponent with a lot of options. We'll talk about those later. So for example, while you can't follow up with a hard slash, you can actually follow up with a dash and hard slash, which is pretty good damage. It works either on a back grab or forward grab. You can also use the poking attack, which is the medium attack. But my favorite for the normal attacks is this one. We'll see other options that you can use. So those are the normal moves. Let's talk about Haohmaru's special moves. Now, since his first appearance in the first game, Haohmaru always had his projectile whirlwind attack, known as the Senpuret Suzan. And it's done by doing a quarter forward circle and any of the slash buttons. And it's basically a whirlwind attack that hit the opponent and throws them into the air. The first part of the damage is on hit, and the second part is when the opponent, hit the ground back. Now, depending on which button you use for the Senpuret Suzan, it changes the distance that the projectile travels. So, for example, this is with the light attack. As you can see, it does not travel very much, about 50% of the screen. If you do it with the medium slash, it goes about 75%. So it does not reach opponents who are on the edge of the screen. However, if you want the projectile to reach them, then you can use the hard slash. slightly slower in terms of startup. In terms of damage, it's about the same. Let's double check that. So 8%. That was the light one. It's the medium one, 8%, and with the hard slash, it's also 80%. So the damage is the same. You can also do it with a kick button, which actually is a whiff version of the attack, which is really good when you play in mind games, against your opponent. So, for example, you can, if your opponent is blocking your attack one after the other, and he's gonna try to jump on you, you can try this one. He will jump, and he'll be pretty much wide open for an anti-air or a Kogetsuzan. Speaking of Kogetsuzan, that's his second attack that he had since the beginning of the series, and it's basically Haohmaru Shoryuken. It's done with the same motion as a Dragon Punch, and you can use it if you do it with the light attack. It's faster, but it's less damage, as you can see here. 2-hit combos, does about 10% of damage. If you do it with the medium attack, it about 12% of damage. It goes a little bit higher. And then finally, if you do it with the hard attack, it actually gets, 18% of damage. This, of course, changes completely when you have a full power gauge. As you can see here, let me go do that. So now we have a full power gauge meter. So as you can see, damage obviously changes when you have a full power gauge. Just look at that. Just normal attacks get higher damage. But remember, we had about five hit combos using the Kogetsuzan with the hard slash. Now notice, now with the power gauge filled, it basically turns this move into an EX move of sorts with the same input. You don't need to add any other button. Just the fact that you have your power gauge full, it changes from a 5-hit combo move to a 12-hit combo, obviously with more damage. Let's go back and get the power gauge depleted. The other move that Haohmaru has is the ground pound, which he had since Samurai Shodown 2, which is basically a reverse Dragon Punch with any of the slash buttons. Well, he turns in the air and does this ground pound. Knocks the opponents down. Good amount of damage. The light one does about 10% here with the power gauge depleted. Doesn't travel much, you can see. Let's try with the medium attack. Does a little bit more damage. You want to be careful if you're close to your opponent, or you might want to use it actually to get behind your opponent, but then it has a slow recovery, so don't use it for that. And then if you do it with the hard slash, obviously more damage, however it travels further and higher, so this is a very good move that you want to do as a counter attack against opponents who actually throw projectiles at you, especially low projectiles like Jubei, for example, or even or Hanzo or Galford. So if they're actually pummeling you with one projectile after the other, you can use that to jump over the projectile and hit the opponent back. Quite a fast attack. However, it has quite a slow recovery. So if you want to be very careful, if they actually block this attack, it will leave you quite open at the end. So you want to be careful with that and time it precisely when they're about to throw their fireball. The other attack is the quarter circle back and kick, which is his, basically Haohmaru hits you with his sake bottle. And you can actually combo into it with using the medium attack. So a medium button. Not a whole lot of damage on this one, but it's a very very fast move. Yeah, about 8% of damage. Again, you can combo into it after a medium slash. So those are Haohmaru's special moves. Let's talk a little bit about his super or weapon flipping technique before we talk about combos. So a weapon flipping technique is basically super, and you do that once you have your power gauge full. And all characters have a universal input for the weapon flipping technique, which is quarter circle forward and medium and hard slashes. So let's try it here. So the thing about weapon flipping techniques or supers in Samurai Shodown is that your power gauge does not get depleted until either you hit your opponent with the super, not if they're blocked. It doesn't matter. If they're blocked, your power gauge stays the same. It doesn't deplete. So you can keep trying one super after the other, which is a lot of people do, which is a big mistake, believe me. Or once your power gauge, it will deplete with time, obviously. So you want to be careful with the weapon flipping techniques. You want to know that you're gonna hit your opponent. Otherwise, it leaves you quite open. You see how that recovery, it takes a while to recover, what leaves you quite open. So you wanna time it. You wanna know exactly when to use the super. For Haohmaru, it actually has this really cool thing where you actually can hit your opponent with a super after a grab, which is not. It can't be the same. It can't be said for all the characters. Some characters can't hit. Use the supers after a grab, which is really cool. So if you wanna use your super, either use it at an anti-air, and you have to be precise for an anti-air. We'll talk about it later, but for this super as an anti-air, it's not really a good option. But doing it after a grab is actually great. Either forward grab or back grab. And it's a weapon flipping technique because it actually lets your opponent lose their sword once they're hit by it. Pretty good damage too, about 25%. Actually, about 42%. So it's a lot of damage. But once you do it, after a grab, the damage scaled down. It's about 25%. So that's one thing. So yes, it basically in Samurai Shodown, it really, it pays to be adventurous, but it also, can cost you a lot. So if you hit your opponent with the super move, there you have it, 42% completely gone. But if you miss, it will cost you. If you want to play it safe, you can use the grab. That one. You hit your opponent, but you get only 25% damage. So you be the judge. What do you want to do? Either you want to be adventurous and make sure you're gonna hit your opponent. But again, in this case, if you want to hit your opponent with the full super, you gotta time it right. Either again, when they jump in and they're really close to the ground, or they're about to do any of their special moves. And then we have, so that's the super move, the weapon flipping technique. Then we have the super special move that all characters have, which do not require you to have, there's no special requirement for them. You actually can do them anytime you want in the match, but you can only do them once. It doesn't matter if you miss. If you miss, it counts as a try and that's gone. You can't use it for the rest of the match. So again, much like the weapon flipping technique, the input is the same for all the characters, which is forward and then half circle forward and then kick and hard slash. So I'm gonna go ahead and... So that's Haohmaru's super special move. Fujinzan, Denshin Fujinzan. And as you can see, 70% damage gone. However, you will notice that the startup of this move really is really long, right? So how do you want to use this? To be honest, it's a little bit difficult at this time to tell you what best situation. It will definitely depend on which character you're fighting. So you want to use it as a counter for something that has basically a move that takes a long time. Otherwise, you're gonna be hit. And you can't do it after a grab or a back grab. See? So again, a lot of damage. However, so that's 70%, doesn't matter. Let's see, that was with the power gauge completely depleted. We're gonna try with the power gauge at a max. See if it's the same damage. Yeah, so that's 70% of damage regardless of what you have in your power gauge. So that's the super special move that Haohmaru has. So this is something you want to use. The only time for the super special I would say it's a good idea to do it is right after a deflect. So if you get if you actually hit, you're able to deflect your opponent's attack using the quarter circle forward and 2 low and medium slashes, then that's the only time it's actually safe to do the super special, attack. As you can see, this is really the safest way you can do the super special move. Now, there's another thing about Samurai Shodown that you might not know, which is also present in this game, is what we call recoil cancels. Now, something like the hard slash is not something you can cancel from, right? Right, there's nothing you can do after this because of how slow it is and of course how damaging it is. However, if your opponent blocks it, you have the opportunity to do what we call recoil cancel. And I'll show you that here in a second. So as you can see, this is his animation of being blocked, and as you can see, it leaves him wide open, which means your opponent can go ahead and do a damaging attack right after. However, you can do a recoil cancel, which basically cancel this animation of... This animation can be cancelled. Let's check it out. As you can see, you can instantly cancel it into a Kugetsuzan. That way, if your opponent is about to counterattack your missed or blocked heavy slash, he will get that Kugetsuzan in the face. It's pretty fast. You can there's other moves that you can do. You can do the sake, the sake bottle hidden. So that's also. You can do the Senpuretsuzan as well, but it has a slow startup, so it's not really a good idea to go with it. As you can see, yeah. So again, the best bet is either do Kugetsuzan, or if you know that your opponent is about to hit, you can actually cancel into a weapon deflect. And then that leaves the opponent quite open when it connects. So that's something that you wanna keep in mind. This is recoil canceling, and it's really important to master it if you wanna get the edge in those upcoming online matches. Now let's talk a little bit about combo potential. Now Samurai Shodown is definitely not a combo heavy game, right? So it's not a game where you can just go ahead and keep shelling combos, you know, like King of Fighters, for example, or Street Fighter, etc. So combos are really not that big of a deal in Samurai Shodown. But surprisingly, Haohmaru has quite easy, setups for combos. Now, one that I actually was able to see, again, this is really early. We might find something else down the line, but I don't think we will, but let's see. So jump in with a hard slash, followed by a medium attack, and then a hard Senpuretsu Kogetsu-zan, sorry. That's a 4-hit combo, that's 30% of damage, right off the bat with my power gauge completely depleted. We're gonna try that same combo, however, we're gonna do it with our power gauge at a max. That's 37%, 12-hit combos. So again, jump in. And the window is a little bit limited. 41% here. An easier combo is actually doing a jump in, hard slash, followed by a Senpuretsu-zan, which does about the same amount of damage a little bit. It's 40% against 41%. Other combos involve the super or weapon flipping technique. So it's jump, heavy slash, and then weapon flipping technique. So it's jump, heavy slash, and then weapon flipping technique. There's another combo that you can do. You can combo into the weapon flipping technique, which is low, down, heavy slash, and then followed by WFT. As you can see, pretty damaging as well. It gets you 60% right off the bat. It doesn't work if you do the heavy low slash that you do after a dash, which is this one. And this is because you knock your opponent down. So it's down and heavy slash. Pretty good combo. Another combo that you again uses the weapon flipping technique is, so it's jump, hard slash, medium slash, weapon flipping technique. And that gets you 70%. That's pretty much the same as doing a super special move, which is quite damaging. Another combo that you can do is, when you are in rage explosion mode, is jump, hard slash, followed by an Isen. The timing is a little bit restricted, so you gotta be careful. So that's about 63% damage, which is quite a lot. Another combo, which is not as damaging as the ones we've previously seen, starts with a grab, followed by a low hard slash into a WFT. It does about 39, well, 40% pretty much, which is still, good damage. So that's pretty much Haohmaru in a nutshell. He's a pretty good rounded character, to be honest. There's a lot of has a lot of options. His special moves are pretty good. His normals are good, and combo potential for Samurai Showdowns are pretty good and easy. So that's Haohmaru in a nutshell. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think of this first episode of the tutorial. Is there anything I missed that you guys want to have covered? Until next time, guys, thank you for watching.